Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yusril. The game is World of Warships, and this video is a summary of my thoughts so far on the work in progress Tier 7 Japanese destroyer Yuudachi as of the 7th of May 2019. And I've date stamped this video because it isn't a review in the usual sense. Yuudachi is still a very much work in progress. This is only her first round of testing on the live server. Everything about her is still subject to change and highly, well, poi. Yep, for those of you that somehow weren't aware, Yuudachi is the original poi boat, and that's something best left for a whole other video. Seriously, it actually warrants a whole other video as to why there's this one verbal tick associated with this one particular boat. What we have at first glance is a slightly tweaked Shiratsu class destroyer. There are a number of small variations from Shiratsu B. Yuudachi has about 400 more health. She has about 100 meters shorter surface detection. She turns about 20 meters tighter, but she shifts the rudder a tenth of a second slower. I note these mostly for completion's sake. A lot of the time you won't really notice the differences. What you will notice, however, is the difference in the weapons fit. The simplest place to start is her anti-air, because there basically isn't any. Yuudachi's AA suite consists of two 40mm Type 91 anti-air guns, putting out one explosion for 560 DPS and 27 continuous DPS with a 93% hit probability between 1000 and 2000 meters. Interestingly, this is actually an upgrade on the original Shiratsu AA fit, which was a pair of 13.2mm Type 93 machine guns. And if you want an idea of how those would do in-game, well, the gun was a licensed copy of the Hotchkiss Model 29, and a pair of those can be found on the French Tier 3 cruiser Friand. They do 29 DPS with a 70% hit probability at 100 to 900 meters. Astonishingly, this is also an interwar French machine gun that Ian McCollum over at Forgotten Weapons hasn't done a video on yet. Shiratsu's array of 25mm cannon might not have the Puff of Doom, but they do at least put out enough reliable damage to knock down a loitering fighter patrol. Yuudachi can't even claim that, unless she gets very, very lucky. Or the pilots get unlucky, it works out about the same, just depends on your point of view. Moving on to the main artillery battery, the guns themselves are identical, 5 12.7cm rifles in a non-super firing AXY setup. The differences are in the reload and the fire control. Yuudachi has a slightly longer range, 11.8 km baseline, and with Aiming Systems Mod 1 installed, she has a dispersion of 96 meters at maximum range, giving an angular error of 8.14 mils. Shiratsu is slightly shorter ranged at 11 km and, again with Aiming Systems Mod 1 installed, has a dispersion of 91 meters at maximum range, making for an angular error of 8.27 mils. Yuudachi therefore has a slight range advantage and is fractionally more accurate, not that you're going to notice in the heat of battle. What you will notice is the difference in the rate of fire. Yuudachi needs 9 seconds to reload her guns, Shiratsu reloads in 7.5. That translates to 33 1/3 rounds per minute for Yuudachi, 40 rounds a minute for Shiratsu, and what that means is that Yuudachi has the second worst high explosive output in the tier, and the only thing stopping it being the worst is the 5th gun barrel. No, really. Z39's high X output with 4 barrels and a 7.5 second reload is 70,400 DPM. Without BFT, Yuudachi gets 71,667. With it, she puts out just shy of 80,000 DPM, and pretty much every other Tier 7 destroyer, and I think quite a few of the Tier 6s, Farragut, I'm looking at you, actually outguns her significantly. Suffice to say that your artillery is very definitely a secondary weapon. So, the anti-air is basically optimism and harsh language. The artillery is a bit dodgy in any kind of straight fight, although I should probably note that straight fights are for suckers and losers. At least the torpedoes are hot stuff, right? Not exactly. In fact, at the moment, not really. The Torpedo is a variant of the Type 90 used on Akatsuki and Shiratsu, so you get the same 17.2 thousand damage warhead. However, this Torpedo trades a few knots of speed for a lot of range. It does a leisurely 57 knots out to a whopping 15 kilometers. At first glance, this opens up some very interesting possibilities, particularly if you partner Yuudachi with an American light cruiser like the Atlanta or the Helena. And yes, both of those ships were on the American side at Yuudachi's last battle. The irony had occurred to me. This partnership works because the two ships cover each other's weaknesses. Yuudachi brings smoke, something most American cruisers don't have, and her torpedoes pack a heavy enough punch at a long enough range to allow her to handle battleships while staying close to her new cruiser friend. Meanwhile, the cruiser gets to have a high old time knocking down planes that threaten either ship, something Yuudachi can't do on her own, as well as shooting up destroyers or cruisers from smoke, while Yuudachi tiptoes around in stealth and provides spotting. It would be a good partnership if Yuudachi's torpedoes didn't have two flaws. One of them is fairly serious and one of them is very nearly fatal. The serious problem is the speed. 57 knots isn't the slowest torpedo at that kind of matchmaking, hello Mark 15s, but especially when deploying at long range, random events can easily mess up a shot without the target ever being aware of the incoming thunderfish of doom. On a few occasions I've actually asked allies to cease fire on the target a few times so they don't spook it, and sometimes that's even worked. While slower torpedoes do allow some round-the-corner shots that a faster torpedo won't make, they're rare enough that most people would probably want a faster torpedo, and I suspect we'll see a lot of builds taking torpedo acceleration to get a 62-knot torpedo, the same speed as Akatsuki and Shiratsu, running out to 12 kilometers. A more serious problem is that these torpedoes have a maximum detection radius of 2.5 kilometers. That translates to just over 16 seconds of brown alert time, when most torpedoes give something between 8 and 10 seconds. This, by the way, is before vigilance, hydro, random ships en route, and the myriad other ways a torpedo can get spotted early can get taken into account. And I'm serious about 16 seconds, by the way. To make the point...
Torpedoes straight ahead! Brace, brace, brace! Hostile destroyer sighted! Torpedoes ahead!
That was 16 seconds, give or take a couple. It is a very, very long time. If, as a cruiser or destroyer captain, you eat one of these torpedoes, then I hate to say it, but it's probably on you. Larger battleships like Bismarck or Tirpitz might have some trouble dodging completely, but something like a US standard dreadnought or warspite, yeah, they'll probably dodge everything, especially at extended ranges where the salvos have larger gaps. Yuudachi's not the only ship that has to deal with this problem, of course. Yoshino has a similar issue at the moment, she is still in testing of course, and the long-range torpedo available to Yugumo and Shimakaze is similar. However, Yoshino's torpedoes are a backup weapon to her artillery, either as a close-range punch where detection doesn't really matter, or as long-range suppression and area denial. Shimakaze and Yugumo have alternative torpedoes, the 12km option being far more popular, or they can mitigate the problem by using either a reload booster or just 15 tubes to saturate the target area. Yuudachi doesn't have an alternative torpedo, and she doesn't have access to a reload booster at the moment. Her primary weapon therefore relies on an enemy being so colossally distracted that for 16 seconds or so they don't notice incoming torpedoes and don't adopt the simple defense of holding down either their A or their D key. As you can probably guess, this is not a common occurrence against competent opponents. The thing is, Wargaming had a good reason when they nerfed the OG 20km torps to have this huge 2.5km detection range. The wall of skill, or torpedo soup, caused mass paranoia back in the day. Just the knowledge that these monster torpedoes could pop up about 8 or 10 seconds away from your vulnerable hull almost anywhere on the map was enough to make many captains simply refuse to advance if a Shimakaze or two were operating on the enemy team. So, the detection range went up to 2.5km, and the proliferation of hydro and radar that we have today began to take its first steps. But that was then, and this is now. Radar and hydro search are far more common than they were in that first year, especially with the German lines now in game. So I'm not sure that argument still holds anymore. Right now, the first change I'd make would be to drop the detection range of the Torpedoes to around about 1.6 kilometers. That's the same as the Akatsuki and the Shiratsu's Type 90 torpedo, and see what effect that has on Yuudachi's performance. It will leave her trading artillery and anti-air, and thus some of her ability to operate away from the rest of the team, while making her a more effective long-range torpedo platform. I'll probably suggest holding off the reload booster for now. One of the limits on her at long range is that she can only put down 8 fish at once. Maybe consider letting her trade it for smoke, or even having both at once in a nerfed format like the original Shiratsu if her performance stays subpar. But we'll see. The last time we saw a destroyer like this was Asashio, and she had several major reworks over the course of her development. Yuudachi has the potential at the moment to be a very effective team player, but she really needs torpedoes that aren't spotted from orbit. I'm going to wrap this one up for the moment. I am Yuudachi. That has been a look at the work in progress Yuudachi, and if you want more warships and other kinds of action, then swing by my channel at twitch.tv/Yuudachi, and don't forget to like, subscribe and enable notifications here. Until next time, farewell.